bit of an update here. Unfortunately, I've been able to keep up to date and do the step-by-step videos I was intending, uh, doing the transmission, going through the engine block, and so on and so forth. So we're going to do a light coverage right now. We're going to discuss all the things that I did um, and why I did them. So other than brakes, we'll get to, that's a whole other project. But we'll get started with how things are going. Basically, I have been very busy with work, so have been able to have the time commitment to work on this. And now I have about a month to get this back together. So that's what we're doing right now. So before I keep gandering here, let's see what we've done. And before we do so, let's take, whoop, look at this beautiful Florida weather out here in winter. I mean, it is early February, so. It is super nice out today. Anyway. So let's start off with our good old front right here, the transmission. So this is a, I rebuilt this, and I'm gonna share a clip or two probably in here, but basically this is a fully built transmission that is, it's not like straight cut gears or anything. Everything's just been redone. I redone first and second synchro. The fifth gear is out of a C59 transmission for that higher gear ratio. The Corollas have that. So gives me a taller top end. So that's really nice. And the bell housing is from the Paseo. So this is kind of like a Frankenstein. So we have the bell housing out of the Paseo, and the top two halves right here, the actual transmission casing is from, zoom in a little bit here. Cool. And so then we have, so we have our Paseo bell housing, and then the rest of our transmission. This all actually is a C56. I thought it was a C52. That's when I bought it. It was supposed to come from an AE 101. I don't think it was the 111. I think it was the 101 11. It's 11. And what I did is I took this transmission and I made it to the Paseo. The reason I did so is so that I could have the LSD and that I could have that fifth gear. So I'm not sure how much power the Paseos normally handle up to in terms of transmission wise. It sounds like they typically range between 250. They usually take 250 horsepower. I'll be pushing that, and I want 100% reliability. I also want an LSD. I don't want to be doing one-wheel peels all the time. So in this guy, we have a COS 1.5 way limited slip. I put that in there. And then again, since this transmission is for a different car, I had to drill these 3 holes here. So these 3 holes are for the transmission mount for the car. Important note, the difference between this transmission and the Paseo original transmission is the casing here. So this casing, the actual transmission casing, is slightly taller than the Paseo. The Paseo is just a little shallower in depth. So when I measure these holes, not only do I have to measure like where they're going to go on this face, but I have to measure from this side of the transmission right here, from the actual bottom side of the transmission up. Same thing with the other one to get the placement correct. And so these holes I drilled out, and I put time inserts in. So these are steel sleeve inserts, and they go all the way into the aluminum, and that's just so I have something really nice and healthy to grab onto when I bolt these guys down. And then this face, you can see I filed it flat. These two are nice and flat and flush with each other. So the trans mount bolts right on, nice and flat and flush, nice and good to go. So I had to do this. I had to, again, do the first and second gear, fifth gear for the higher final drive. I'm sorry, for the essentially final drive, I guess, in fifth. But the actual the actual gear ratio off the diff is higher. I think it's a 4.3 than the Paseo's original. So that guy is a little bit taller. But this is the Frankenstein transmission, and I'm super stoked to get him running because this is going to be mint. I'm going to have the first, I think his first, second, and third are closer than the Paseo. and the first to second shift isn't like a dog like in the Paseo. So got those taken care of. So I'm super stoked for this trans. So there's that. Whoa! Sweet victory, baby. Let's go. Look at that. Beautiful. Got them off, boys. Boom. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Off. Bada bing, bada boom, baby. The bass shaft. Alright, so next is our engine block. This guy is almost ready to go. I have yet to do a couple more things to him. So right now we've got the whole bottom end assembled. This was all done in the machine shop. So I had them completely build the engine. It's got Wiseco 9.2 to 1 compression pistons and the max speeding rod, forged connecting rods, and then I think it's King's bearings, and the crankshaft is fine for like whatever 400, 500 wheel horsepower apparently. And so that's out of the other block, my parts block over here. And I just slapped on some stuff today. We got the oil pressure relief valve in, our oil pump, and then the main seal over here as well. So this still, I have some stuff to do to finish this. I'm gonna go pull the oil pickup off of a second gen engine I have laying around. And that is actually deeper than the first gen. So less chance of oil star. We're all about mad turns here. So we're gonna pick that up as well before I finish putting this bottom pan back together. Also, this is not the pan that's gonna go on here. I have another one that has a oil fitting welded on. So an oil return for the turbo. So that's gonna be welded on. I'm gonna have to paint this guy and go from there. But the block is pretty much ready to go. And then the cylinder head, more or less same thing. That's kind of away right now, but it's been surfaced. I did the valves and they did the valves again just to make sure, but the valves are fine. Checked all the shims, they're all good. Basically the entire head's ready to go. And right now what I'm currently working on is this guy. What I'm currently working on is this. So it's kind of hard to see, but because we're going turbo, what we're doing is we're doing coil ignitions on the spark plugs here. So I'm currently lining up the coils so they look nice, and figuring out where I'm going to weld them and where I'm going to have the vent, where we're going to have the basically crankcase ventilation bungs welded onto. So there's going to be one right over here, and there's one going to be where the original PCV valve was. So I'm going to throw those guys on there. I'm going to have all that stuff welded up and go from there. So basically a bunch of little things. But a lot of this takes work. And I guess we will cover the brakes right now real quick. Alrighty, so here is the engine bay situation with the brakes. So we have, starting off, we have a Camry, 1-inch bore master cylinder, so slightly upgraded there. Just the original Paseo is supposed to be 15/16, I believe. So upgraded a 1/16 of an inch. So this guy, and then we have right here is our proportion valve. So this is for the rear brakes, allowing me to adjust how much pressure is sent to the rear brakes, which is going to be awesome. I've never been able to lock up the rear brakes on this car ever, even when it's wet out. So this should allow me to really regulate the control of the braking vehicle. And then just down here is basically what I did to get rid of the original proportioning valve that came stock. That was over here. So what I did is, to get rid of that, is I just had some fittings, like this guy is just a T-valve for the rear brakes, and then those just route up and get sent to the rear brakes. So forth, pretty simple, but takes a lot of time to get the bends right and have all the fittings made. When you buy a kit and it doesn't work like it's supposed to, how I'm gonna have them set up, get done. But anyway, there's that. And then we'll talk briefly about these guys as well, in the rears. Bloop. Let me. All right, so here we have our beautiful Willwood brakes. So I went and basically made this myself. I mean, Willwood obviously makes all this, right? But in terms of figuring out the clearances and whatnot, what rotors are going to work, what kind of hats, the depth of them, the rotors themselves, what types of rotors there are, and then the calipers as well. What kind of caliper do I want? Do I want a 4-piston? Do I want a 6-piston? How easy it is to change out the brake pads and stuff. For this guy, you literally just loosen up this bolt, pull it out a little bit, and then this clip comes out, take the pads out, put them in, slip the clip back in, and you're good to go. It's that simple. So I can switch quickly from street pads to track pads without having to remove the caliper. Now is the entire idea. On the back side, you can't see it right now, but I'll show a little bit of video. I'll be putting these together, are the caliper brackets. So I designed those myself with a 3D printer, designed it all up, got the positioning right in terms of the caliper clearance to the hat, and then the caliper clearance from the rotor. And then I went out and had that piece CNC'd out of aluminum. But before I did all the finite element analysis and did like just a brief study and make sure that these are actually going to hold up to the forces that are going to be endured. I'll do a separate video on making these later, but that's how these guys are. I had bought pre-made cables already, but they didn't work. They weren't the right length and they didn't have the right fittings and stuff. So I went out and had these made. $50 for a set of 2, so $100 in total for flex lines all around the car. Pretty solid. And yeah, there you go, stainless steel braided flex lines. So these guys are good to go. These are my front brakes, 4-piston Willwoods. Let's go take a look at the rear, which everyone's going to be wondering about as well. All right, so driver's side rear. This is basically what it's going to look like when it's done. So you can kind of see a little bit. Whoops. That caliper sitting back there. So again, these are Miata rear brakes. And so let's go take a look at what the actual caliper looks like. All right, so here is the actual assembly that I made as well. So same thing with the fronts. I had to make entire caliper brackets. So the drum was turned down. So typically it's a drum, but I had it turned down to be a rotor. Essentially, I'm sorry, a spindle. So you have just the mounting surface of the spindle head, and then you could fit the rotor on top of it. And then there's a bracket behind it that mounts up to the caliper, allows the caliper bracket to mount to that, hence the caliper now being here. Reason I went with Miata is because they're everywhere. 1, 2, they have a parking brake, which works and is relatively easy to adjust. Parts everywhere, and they seem pretty reliable. So, and watching the videos of how to swap the pads, I'll take a moment, but once you figure it out, I think it's pretty straightforward. As well as having the dimensions I wanted. They weren't, the Miata calipers are for about the same weight vehicle, and this is the right size and mass rotor that I was looking for the amount of heat dissipation I was looking for. So, in the rear we have, which you're not going to be able to see, maybe. In the back, nope. So I can't, I'll show you guys later, but in the back is the parking brake assembly that allows you to rotate right. There you go. There you go. So Now we've got floating rear caliper with brakes. This is not the final product. I have to do something else for the e-brake setup. The way I have it is going to work and it's reliable. I don't know how long it'll be reliable for, but it doesn't make it easy to change out these discs. I'm sorry, these pads. So to change out the pads and to swap the rotor out, it's a bit of a process, and I'm going to change that up. So that'll come down the road. But right now, everything works just as intended. If I leave it just like this, nothing like this is totally fine. It's going to work exactly how it should. The entire system's been bled. I've already bled all the brakes. So this thing is pretty much ready to run in terms of brakes. Like, it's all set up, ready to go. So that's where things stand right now. We're steady working on this. Again, I got about a month or so to get this going. Changes happening in life and whatnot. So super busy, but now I'm going to try and get all this done as quickly as possible. And yeah. So again, what's next? What I have left to do next is I have the clutch and the flywheel. I'm having sent out to be balanced. Once that's done, then the entire engine transmission assembly can be put together. I'm going to slap that in the car. But once that's done, then it's just pretty much engine management and getting that all lined up. So I have to do the wiring for all my gauges. So I've got water, temperature, oil pressure, and oil temperature sensors, my wideband, all to set up, and I also have to set up the boost controller. So for someone who's not a big fan of wiring, it's going to take me a little bit. So a day or two to make sure all the wiring's exactly how it should be. Nothing's going to short out or not. I also have a couple things I'd like to do custom in there in terms of like how I want the wiring to look, the gauges and whatnot. So you guys will see down the road. But we're getting pretty close. It's just all the little odds and ends of things, like the little bullshit. Basically, like the valve cover to get these to bolt down and for everything to look nice and good. I gotta like tap these little spacers that'll be welded on to the valve cover, and getting all these alignments and everything all set up so whoever's welding it can just go to town. I don't have the experience to do some pretty welds on this, so. But yeah, slow and steady. So hopefully in a couple weeks, engine's in, I can pretty much get everything fitted and hopefully get it ready to turn over soon. But I expect that day to come in like 2 weeks. So I'll keep you all updated and see if I can make videos in the meantime. One other thing that I forgot to mention here while we're doing this is, bloop. Can't really see it, but at some point, because I also have to mock up the intercooler in here. So mocking up the intercooler, I also have to do the oil cooler. So I'm having an oil cooler as well, and I have to have an oil relocation kit. I'm intending on putting it over here, as long as it's not near the turbo, but we'll see. So there's tons of other little things that need to occur. So I'll keep you guys. But yeah, I'll try and keep you guys updated with as much as possible and make some more of the videos of like how things were made here. I'm definitely going to do a brake video at some point in terms of like how I came to the conclusion of what brakes I used and why and where I went to find those resources and stuff. As well as the transmission, there's a lot of information that I learned on the transmission in terms of like where to go get the parts, websites to help look it up and stuff. So at some point I'll like to give a complete breakdown. I just already swamped. So, but yeah. Till next time, let's go. This thing's gonna be sick.